Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Heal Your Mind, Heal the World podcast. My name is Anne Marie Morales, and today I have with me Dr. Karen Khan. She is a former medical doctor, acupuncturist, and now runs her own academy teaching people her own methods called the TOLPAKAN Healing Modality. She's also an author and a beautiful metaphysical transformational being. And so without further ado, I welcome Dr. Karen to Heal Your Mind, Heal the World podcast.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. What a beautiful introduction. I appreciate you.
Oh, no, thank you. I appreciate you. I came across your work very recently, actually through a Facebook ad. So kudos to your
That works.
investment on Facebook or Instagram or one of those. And I took one of your seminars because as a hypnotherapist and as an energy worker over the years, I appreciated that you were talking about entity attachments. But before we get to that, I'd really love for you to tell the listeners how you got to be who you are. I mean, you were a medical doctor already, you were a acupuncturist. How did that turn you into this metaphysical healer?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think many of us experience whatever we need to experience to get us to our soul mission. And I was, in some ways, really off course, at least mentally and emotionally. So I did what most good firstborn Chinese in Canada do, which is go to medical school and become a medical doctor. And because I was wanting to be everything to everyone, not healthy, by the way, I couldn't tolerate the kind of schedule that doctors have. So being on call, I was often in rural, underserved, medically underserved areas. At times, I was on call for 17 days straight, and uh, it was just really hard on the body. And being a very sensitive soul that I am, I wasn't, all that tough, really. And it didn't take much for the body to break down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And at that point, that was the best thing that could happen to me. It's like the universe slowing me down
Yeah.
so I could reevaluate my life. So many
Mm-hmm.
of us have these beliefs, ancestral beliefs, family beliefs, cultural beliefs that, girls should be kind and considerate and think about other people. Boys get a little bit more room to do what they want. And also in the Chinese culture, it was very much respecting your elders and doing what they say, what they want, even though I was a little bit rebellious, probably not enough. Um, and so I was really just trying too hard to please everyone. Chronic people pleasers, you probably meet a lot of those,
Yeah.
tend to be sensitive souls. And so this breakdown of the body going into fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, eventually thyroid inflammation or autoimmunity. I began being allergic to everything, sensitive to EMF, depression finally, which of course was low energy, but at the time it looked a lot like my mother's depression. She had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue too.
Wow.
So I got to
Okay.
follow in her footsteps, not in a positive way in this case. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because it slowed me down. I got to feel what it's like to be in the dark night of the soul, to really feel like I want to give up, I want to kill myself, I don't want to live anymore, it's too painful. Luckily, my angels, guys, whoever you want to call me, call them, somehow were able to communicate to me on a very uh, dreary, sad kind of night, and was able to get a message across to me that I had a choice. And even though I argued with them, I decided that, okay, if I did have a choice and didn't have to do XYZ, what would I do? And one of the first things was to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
In my culture, it was definitely a no-no, really frowned upon. I would go from like, the white sheep to the black sheep overnight. And I did. And it was really, really hard on my parents. However, all this time I had been blaming them. Talk about, heal your mind, heal the body, heal your life, and heal the world. I had a lot of mind belief issues that were really not supportive and really unhealthy. So this was my opportunity to look into all of those, to examine them and decide, do I really still want to believe that? Do I really need to be everything to everyone? Do I need to be responsible for everything that happens to everybody? Do I need to take care of everyone? Well, I couldn't take care of myself at that point. So that was a big, huge no. I can't do that. Now, I do still have little trends of things that I'm still working on because it's a work in progress, but it was a beautiful way to really stop me in my tracks, reevaluate what I was thinking, what I was believing, what the culture told me, and start to choose from basically a blank slate. What do I want? And Anne-Marie, I had no idea.
Yes. I mean, and when you're relating your story, and while I'm not from Chinese descent, I'm from a European Roman Catholic descent, and I mean, divorce is unheard of. It's a sin,
Right. Yes, that's right.
So
Yes.
I'm seeing so many parallels in our journey, and also, truth be told, autoimmune too. I came down with autoimmune a couple of years ago, years into my healing journey. So, wow, there's so many parallels. But so here you are, the daughter of a Chinese family, breaking all the cultural rules, but really finally realizing that you've got to put yourself first. And so, talk to us now. Walk us through that journey. What happened next?
Lots of shadows coming up. I started diving into books and different teachers and found a spiritual teacher in town, actually, who started doing energy work and healing, and also being a really great mentor, questioning some of these beliefs that I had. And she was so kind and so compassionate. I couldn't not follow, a new way of thinking. So that was a real godsend or goddess send. And after that, just one thing was, I was attracting one thing after another to help me in that next stair step of improvement. And within about 2 years, I healed myself. And most people with those diagnoses don't get healed. They stay chronically diseased and they go to the doctor forever. However, luckily I was a doctor. And part of that stubbornness inside me, we have now reframed that to the word tenacity. That tenacity really was helpful because I said, okay, everything that I know has not helped so far. So I'm going to be open to learning new things, and everything I learn, I incorporate very, very, very quickly. And that's how I was able to let go and surrender more and more to the process. I think if one could imagine my angel team or guide team, they're probably like, phew, finally,
Yeah.
she's finally listening. And that was wonderful. So after healing myself, after 2 years, I was realizing with my acupuncture clients, I had stopped doing family medicine because it was way too stressful. I had a 2.5 hour drive there and back, and it was just a really difficult situation. And in the primary care, in that underserved area, most people were not at the place to really empower themselves, to heal themselves. They were looking for me to fix them. They're looking for me to rescue them. And I think that I burnt out. So I decided I wanted different patients, and I still was in that rescue mode. However, it took some years to get out of that. And I loved acupuncture because it was so different from Western medicine. It was about energy and chi, and in Chinese medicine, it connected with the psyche. It connected with energy blueprints, things that we don't talk about in Western medicine. And I saw people get get healed faster and faster. And then when I was introduced to even more energy work, the emotion code, the body code, that was really a pivotal step because I realized, wow, I can use muscle testing that we both use. We use muscle testing. I can connect in to somebody else's energy field with their permission and start testing what is going on and what we can do about it. These modalities really help to shift and change and transmute these energies. Then after a while, I was going to
Yes.
say that I got some stranger answers. So Dr. Bradley Nelson, the creator of the body code, he introduced the idea of entities and entity attachments. And that was a whole other world for me. I've always loved supernatural stuff, even scary movies. Not so much the gore, but scary movies. And I was just so fascinated by it. I just like diving in, like every book that I could find, I was reading. And I found another mentor who specialized in this way. And she told me, I didn't believe her at the time, but she told me, you are anointed to do this work. You are safe. You have so many support angels with you. And then I expanded it because people needed more than just that. So I was getting little hints about different things that I didn't know about. And I would have these conversations with Source about what's going on with this person. I remember there was a 14-year-old who would not walk through the kitchen. And his mother said, I don't know what's going on with him. I mean, there's nothing wrong with the kitchen. Like he will walk around the long way to get to the other side. And I said, well, let's go see. So we tuned into the home, and sure enough, there was something in the kitchen that he could not tolerate. Now, he was autistic, so he was very sensitive, as most of them are. And so I asked Source, what is he avoiding? Long story short, it's something we call a dimensional rift. So that is a rip in space-time. So if he were to walk through it, his body would be exposed to dimensional energies, in this case of multiple different space-time dimensions. Generally speaking, most humans don't tolerate that well. Now, some of the extraterrestrial folks that have kind of space traveled a lot, like they can shift very quickly, but our dense human bodies, not so much. So he knew to avoid it. And these are some of the strange things we found. Now, it's just to close the story, it was very easy to seal, but we had to know about things. So these things, ET implants, like different things, curses, vows, like different things, past life stuff, would show up for the person to heal and be aware of. So I would just follow the breadcrumbs. What's next? What's next? And I don't know the answer, so let's ask Source. And I would guesstimate until I got a yes, and then I like keep going down there. So that's how we developed the TOLPAKAN Healing Method. I did not want to create a healing method. There are plenty of awesome healing methods out there already. I actually argued with my angels about that, and they said, yes, you are. I said, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. No, you're not. No, I'm not. I said, why? There's so many healing methods out there. Why do I need to create a new one? And I was also thinking the amount of work. And they said, because sometimes someone understands what someone else says and sometimes they don't. And then you're there to fill the gaps, what they don't understand. I said, okay, I kind of sort of get that. And they also said, it's because it's your soul expression for this timeline, this lifetime. I said, well, can't argue with that one. So here we go.
Wow.
So that's how the TOLPAKAN Healing Method was born.
Thank you for telling us all of that. Now, your communication with your guidance, is it a channeling? Is it telepathic? Or do you use the muscle testing? How do you get interface with them?
Yeah, that's a great quality question. The first thing is that I use my body. Our body is like the nervous system is like the conduit between our direct knowing and all the information that's out there. So I use the body, and muscle testing is my key way of doing that. Although some people don't necessarily need to actually physically move their muscles to do muscle testing. But here's the thing, I differ a little bit in some other teachers when they talk about or teach muscle testing, in that sometimes they'll say, well, we're going to talk to your subconscious. I don't talk to the subconscious because sometimes the subconscious has things and records in there that are a little askew. They're not quite accurate. I also generally don't talk to someone's angelic team or their guardian angels. I go basically straight to the top, if you will, and I talk to the field, the one source, the creator of all. Now that we are human, so there will be some bias. I do my best to stay out of bias. And one of the ways I do that is I go into what I call the stillness, the void. So I have a little exercise. I think you might have already experienced it in the workshop called Stillness Through Observing Internal Movement. And I have a free workshop if anybody wants to watch that for free. And we teach people how to get into the still point through the body. That makes one so much more reliable, less likely to have bias. And even things that we talked about before, the entities, they can interfere with muscle testing, but less so if you're actually in the stillness. So we always align to source through the stillness first. Then we ask through divine muscle testing. We're asking source directly, not necessarily others. I don't ask somebody's ancestors. I had one person one time say, well, my cat guide said.
Oh.
And then, well, this was a long time ago, and my colleague who I really trusted, and I wasn't, as sure of myself then, and I just wanted somebody to double check. The woman had emailed and says, well, I'm very concerned because I turned on your healing music, your Ascension 1 and 2, and my baby started crying. And then I turned it off and the baby stopped crying. I think there's something wrong with your audios. So instead of me being biased, I said, well, let me ask a colleague who I highly respect, who does a lot of entity work. So I asked Diana Kuschenbach in this case. I said, okay, this is the scenario. And she's very funny because she'll email like 2 lines and then that's the end. She said, the baby's got entities, tell her to turn the music on.
Right. Wow.
It's so funny. So, sometimes we never know what we're going to get, but being in the stillness, and this is the woman with the cat guides, right? So, Diana says, why would she trust a cat guide over source? That was her question. I was like,
yeah,
I don't know. Anyway, so that's one of our, funny stories about cat guides and source. And so that's how we get our answers. And then the best part of the TOLPAKAN healing method is asking quality questions, not just, yes, they're all simple yes, no questions, but depending on what you're asking, it'll really inform the answer. For example, somebody could say, I really like bread. I muscle tested that bread's okay for me. They get a yes. I said, okay. I said, and they said, well, bread's okay for me. I said, all right, well, you have these goals. You have autoimmune, you have you're overweight, you want to lose some pounds, right? And you have some, sugar addictions. So let's do some better quality questions. I'll ask, what kind of bread? And the person said, what do you mean, what kind of bread? I said, is it whole wheat, sourdough, homemade, organic? Does it matter, right? So we muscle tested that. Then how much per week, per day, per week, so that your other goals are met, so you don't, have too much. He never thought of asking the amount. He just got a yes because his quality questions, is it safe for me to take this? Like, is it okay? And so the answer is yes. Right. So I asked how much. Well, it turns out that it's a specific brand of organic sourdough, and he's allowed to have half a slice once a week. So not to interfere with his goals, his healing goals. Well, he puts his arms like this, well, forget it. What am I going to do with half a slice of bread? So that's what I mean by quality questions. There's all sorts of quality questions we can ask of source. Hopefully that answers what you were asking.
It absolutely does answer. And as somebody who specializes in the subconscious mind, I think you're spot on. That is not the place to go for answers because the subconscious mind is strictly connected to your ego mind. It's strictly connected
Mm.
to the iteration of you and your experiences. It is not a font of eternal knowledge. In my experience, that would be the superconscious realm. That would be the Akashic realm. That would be a different realm. So, yeah, I'm with you on that. When I heard you say somebody goes to the subconscious, I'm like, well, maybe they interpret the subconscious as something different than what I do, but
Right,
I would
probably.
certainly never go there. Yeah, I'd never go there for that. Yeah, and whenever I tend to I use a pendulum as well. I use
Hmm.
pendulum and muscle testing. And one time I was teaching how to use a pendulum, and it's the same thing, the same kind of question. I'll go over to like the snack bar and buy some crappy things, and I'll hold it and I'll ask the pendulum, can I eat this Snickers bar? And of course, the pendulum's going to swing. Of course you can eat it. You have free will. However, if you ask the proper question, is it in my best and highest good to consume this Snicker bar? And of course, the pendulum's going to swing no. So, yeah, I'm totally with you on that. And so, what a brilliant way to assist people. I really find that beautiful. Now, can I ask you a couple questions about your opinion, having gone through the medical field and having been trained in Western Rockefeller medicine? And I heard you mention that, I think, on another interview that you did. Can you give your opinions on how do you think the future of medicine, let us call it, is going to be? Because you know that, I mean, in my profession, in hypnosis, hypnotherapy, energy medicine, the doors are opening up. They're becoming a little bit more open-minded when it comes to the power of the mind and all that. What are your thoughts on that, please?
Well, thanks for asking this question. I think that all of our various different institutions have no choice but to open up because it is the so-called, and I'll call us consumers, because in some ways we kind of are in the system. The consumer is desiring something else, and because they are a consumer, aka a customer, if you don't give the customer what they want, at least on some level, they're going to go elsewhere. So they don't want to lose their customers. So they're constantly putting billions of dollars into marketing and all these kinds of things to try to get them back. But sometimes it doesn't work as well as it used to. So with all those billions of dollars, they will find innovative ways to sometimes connect what it is they want and try to integrate it into the Western medical model. It doesn't integrate terribly well, but it can. Like, for example, when I worked in UCLA, and California being one of the more blue states and more so-called progressive or open to alternative therapies, almost every health plan in that state had a provision that you could go to X number of acupuncture visits per year. Now, in the New York State, even though we are blue here mostly, there is no such provision.
Right.
Right. In fact, we have a very antiquated and old, we call it the quack law. I don't actually know what the name of the law is. So that there are certain established labs with high-end kind of blood work that you can do. For example, magnesium. If you get a magnesium blood test from any hospital, just your average regular, the doctor writes magnesium level, you will get a blood magnesium level. But those of us in functional medicine or interested in functional medicine and in the know will realize that the magnesium in the blood is supposed to stay stable because the body will do whatever it can to keep it stable so you don't have a heart attack or something worse. So where's the magnesium coming from? Well, your organs and probably your bones. So a real magnesium level can be had with an intracellular, sorry for the tech, RBC, red blood cell, magnesium level. So they take the red blood cells and measure the magnesium inside the cell, not outside the cell in the blood, inside the cell. That's much more accurate reflection of your actual magnesium levels. And guess what? 70% of Americans are low in magnesium. And that is not something that you hear at the doctor's office. In fact, many of the medications that are commonly prescribed by the doctor, as kind of like normal medicine for everyone, depletes magnesium among other minerals and vitamins. This red cell magnesium test is considered illegal in New York State.
Oh,
The
wow.
saliva cortisol is considered illegal to perform in New York State. You literally have to cross to Vermont, which is really close to me, cross to Vermont, put your saliva in the tube, send it from Vermont. Otherwise, the lab cannot run it. It has to be sent from a different state and mailed the results to, well, now we have email, right? But mailed to, you have to have somebody else's, your sister, your cousin, whoever's address, because it's so antiquated. People can't get the tests they want, which is really sad and crazy.
Wow, I had no idea. I just moved from New York. I lived in New York for over 20 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I lived on Staten Island. Then I moved upstate to Orange County, which is not as upstate as I understand
Right.
you are
And
at.
I'm really upstate compared to that.
Yeah, you're super upstate. Yeah, wow, weird. That is just so weird. Um, but yeah, I mean, in my own personal experience, and even though I've worked in the medical field eons and ages ago as like an office assistant, and I'm pretty familiar with medical terminology.
Mm,
Nowadays, what I'm seeing people do is they will use the traditional medical system for their diagnostic abilities, and then they take that information and take it to a naturopath or take it to another or an acupuncturist or a holistic physician to navigate whatever they're going through.
mm.
So,
Yeah, sometimes it can be helpful. Other times it can be harmful. Why is it harmful? Because of the mind. As you
right.
know, when people get a diagnosis, they attach themselves very
Yeah.
hard to that diagnosis. In fact, I don't necessarily even enjoy, am attached to talking about having had fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. It seemed like so long ago. And at the same time, I realized people can identify with those
Right.
terms. So
Right. I agree.
yeah, if they
Mhm.
get a diagnosis, then I've seen on my end as an energy healer now that people stick to that diagnosis like Velcro.
Yes.
And they want to know, well, what's causing my XYZ? Um, and in energy medicine, you're not allowed to practice medicine, so you're not really allowed to diagnose. Well, guess what? It doesn't matter because whatever the diagnosis is, most of the time, doctors put a label on a bunch of symptoms or possibly a couple lab tests and a bunch of symptoms. And they go, well, we think it's that.
Mhm.
Now, some things are more clear, right? You have a heart attack, it's a heart attack. Yeah,
Right.
the blood didn't go there, but why did the person have a heart attack? Most people cannot figure that out. They're like, oh, well, yeah, cholesterol was high. Yeah, but why is cholesterol high? And is that really the cause? Because if you listen to Johnny Bowden and Dr. Steven Sinatra, it's not the cause. High
Mm.
cholesterol is the result of something else. It is the band-aid trying to prevent a heart attack. You're like, what? Right? So there's a lot of things in medicine, only 30% that actually have some data related to like it actually is efficacious, probably less if you look at some of the other things out there. And some of the things that we learned, it takes 50 or more years to integrate into the medical model, like quantum, right? Quantum physics has been around for a long time. I never heard of it in medical school. Never heard of it. Like, what? But it's been
Right.
around for a really long time. And only now are we, well, I shouldn't say we as in everyone in medicine, but the average person, there's more people interested in that kind of work. So the diagnosis itself is not very helpful. However, some of the testing can be, as long as they get a coach or mentor or someone like yourself to say, okay, look, the diagnosis is just a label, but we can have these markers to just see how you're doing. So I know that, high cholesterol is due to inflammation. Then I can use TOLPAKAN Healing to figure out why is the person inflamed. Now, it could be something physical, for sure. They're eating Roundup doused wheat every day. Or it could be that on mom's side of the family, there's a curse 80 generations back, right? So, and maybe multiple other things, but I can use the CRP in the lab to follow it. Now, I don't order it anymore. They just do it with their doctor, and, I don't function as their doctor, but I can look at it and I can go, oh, look, your inflammation is dropping. Yay, right? It's a marker of inflammation. I have my own markers of inflammation that we can muscle test, and I have all sorts of protocols left, right, and center of how to evaluate different things. Some are a little bit more, medical, although most of my students are not medical people, and others are just more like relationship stuff, prosperity stuff, like all sorts of other possibilities.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your perspective on this, because you obviously have a whole side of this that the average person does not. Your medical training and your own personal experience. How important do you think it is for people not to not believe what they're told, but to just, hold it with kind of like a grain of salt? I mean, I remember I was diagnosed with Graves' disease. Okay. So my thyroid hormones were wild and wacky. But, the technical term for that is that it's your body attacking itself. And I was like, there's no way my body's attacking itself. Absolutely. I don't believe that at all. Like, I never bought into that. So, in your experience, what have you seen with people, and like you said, their love of their diagnosis, or what happens with them? And
Yes, there's a lot of different facets to this whole, and I really, really enjoy you asking this kind of quality question because you really understand, what people are dealing with. And when somebody has a diagnosis, they can either attach or just not attach. But sometimes they want, I'm backing up here, but sometimes they almost crave a diagnosis because they want to know why. Now, that's the beauty of, the TOLPAKAN Healing Methods. We actually tell them the why. But the why is not what they think. The why is, we have cheat sheets and you muscle test, the why. But people feel comfortable or more comfortable having a reason. They're looking for the reason. And unfortunately or fortunately, they're also looking for the recipe to get better. So I think it is really important for people to discern what is true for them. So again, using the body, one does not have to do or perform divine muscle testing to know, because a lot of people go, I don't know, I didn't feel good, or that didn't make sense, or that really scared me. And I got to tell you, medicine, unfortunately, and I'm speaking as a medical doctor here, we tend to scare people. And I've done it, and I regret doing it, but I've done it where I'm really concerned about someone's health. And I will say, look, the data shows that with this, 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 and this, you have an X amount of chance of having a heart attack and a stroke. You need to change your lifestyle. You need to do this. You need to stop smoking. You need to blah, blah, blah. But you know what? The person's like, ugh. They're so scared. Guess what? They do nothing. Now I know there's a better way. There's a better way. And sometimes when we can heal the energetics underneath these habits, why are they smoking? Why are they doing these? Oh, because they have this inner child wound, right? Of not enoughness and blah, blah, blah. So you can find out all those things. Then they can be in a better place to heal themselves. But I think your question is really great, because we can, if we learn to tune in, we can actually feel our answer. And it may not be what the doctors want you to believe, and it may not be what your family wants you to believe.
I
Talk to
know
me
that.
about family.
Oh boy, I got you on that too. I totally believe it. So I I don't have a large family. I have my sons, and my mom is still alive, and my mom is 100 years old. So
Well, good for
she,
her.
yeah, she made, and she's a conundrum. Like, I don't know how she got there. If it's just for sheer will, I don't know how she's made it to 100, but God bless her. She's still around. Um, but yeah, my expectations from my older son especially
Mm,
were, why aren't you doing what, I have to like be careful how I communicate with him. Are you taking
right.
your
You don't
medication?
like not too much woo
Yeah.
woo.
No, no,
We don't talk about
not
ghosts at the dinner table.
no. As a matter of fact, my kids and I grew up watching Supernatural, and
Oh,
I I remember you mentioning that on that. And an interesting question now, are you still able to watch those programs?
yes. I don't necessarily choose to watch every single paranormal. Like for example, I think there is a series called Paranormal,
Mm-hmm.
and I had absolutely no interest.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I mean, I did scare myself silly in multiple different, scary movies in the past because I didn't realize how scary they were going to be. Like, I remember really, this is way back in med school or before that, Freddy Krueger like scared the bejeebies out of me, just I
Yeah.
could not sleep. And then I have a story in my Sensitivity is Your Superpower book about watching The Ring, the original one, scared the bejeebies out of me and couldn't sleep for 3 days. And that's how I found out about stillness. That's stillness through observing internal movement because I couldn't sleep and then I had to watch the sequel. So I figured, well, I couldn't sleep no matter what I did, the meditation, breathing, satnam, I mean, movement, progressive relaxation, nothing worked to get me to sleep. And I didn't sleep well for 3 days. So when I watched the sequel, I thought, well, I might as well just be scared. I'm just going to be scared. And then I felt my body being scared. And it was like all this energy. I was like, whoa, like I had not even noticed that 2 seconds ago until I chose to just be, the word is be, scared. The beingness, I was able to, I didn't even try. I mean, I was just feeling the buzz and then I was able to go into that still, and then I fell asleep. um, so I can
Beautiful.
watch any scary movie. I tend not to like war movies. I think part of me is like that soul who's like the earth angel is like peace, peace, peace. It's like I don't like the war movies. However, I did watch Star Wars and different things, different genres because I really like outer space stuff as well. And I can watch it just by going into stillness. It is not scary at all when I can do that. And I'm like, well, I'm not entertained. Why am I watching this? So it's a little practice that I do. So I don't even muscle test. I'll just feel into the
Mm-hmm.
movie and decide yes or no. What's the entertainment value? Sometimes it is educational because there's something, a hint, a tip, a reveal in the movie that I go, oh, that's programming. Oh, I know what they're
Yeah.
doing there. Now I know that. So I can tell other people about it, right? And they don't have to watch the movie.
Yeah. Oh, I'm with you on that. And so now I'd like to open up the topic about the entity attachment. So in this is something that I've been dealing with in my own personal life. I did a Ouija board with a cousin one summer when I was 14, and I picked up an an attached energy. And it was funny. My dad used to love, I don't know if you remember back in the day, the 700 Club. I come from Christianity. It was a conservative Christian TV show that came on.
Hmm.
And it was the same time that E.T. and
Oh,
Poltergeist came out. Okay, so
right. Two of my favorite movies from the day.
yeah, so I was a young girl, and I had just come back from living a year abroad where I got this attachment. And he prayed a prayer of deliverance, and I felt tingling from head to toe. And this entity just like lifted off of me. So that was incredible. I mean, that's how I began my journey with
Wow.
these beings. But how did that, now I know you learned it, right, as a diagnostic tool. Talk to us about this world that most of us have absolutely no clue about it.
Mm. Well, having been Roman Catholic as well, we do believe in angels and demons on some
Oh,
level.
yeah. Oh, okay. I
Uh,
was going to ask you that. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I was going to ask you, being a Chinese immigrant, like, did you have spirituality as a child, and what did you grow out of that to become like a more metaphysical, spiritual person? Yeah.
mhm. Well,
So,
I definitely grew up Roman Catholic, although
oh,
I think my dad was, wait, I think my dad was Roman Catholic. My mother was Protestant. They grew up in the British controlled Hong Kong, so they both spoke very well in English. And, you know, my mom always jokes that she failed Chinese, but her English was A plus. So one of them changed to Catholicism so they could get married. Back in the day, remember you couldn't get married if you were in different denomination. So I grew up there and I was very devout. I was very religious growing up, more than they were. Not that I was particularly clairvoyant or anything like that. I was just really obedient, like to a fault. I look back and kind of cringe at my obedience because I needed to be good. Why did I need to be good? Because my mom was going through depression and I wanted to be the good kid so I didn't stress her out. You know those patterns, right? So this shifted when I went to college in Canada. We call it university. And my then boyfriend turned into my first husband, was very analytical, very left brain, and atheist.
mm,
And he basically proved to me that the Catholics were violent in history. And I was never taught that. So I felt really betrayed, not knowing about the different various inquisitions and different kind of, witch burnings and all this kind of stuff. And so I was really dismayed and felt betrayed and disenchanted with all of it. So I became atheist up until the point where I was so sick, I was crying that night and wanting to kill myself. Then I heard a voice, my own voice of spirit saying, you have a choice. So it was then that was the turning point. And then it was never about religion after that. It was really about tuning into intuition and getting guidance from within, really. And which is why I'm really passionate about our students being able to do that.
mm, lovely. Thank you. I love that. And so now moving forward, yes, I agree with you. We're okay with possessions in the Catholic Church. There's the exorcisms and all that kind of thing. And how does your method differ from that? Be gone, kind of like battling with the darkness. How does your method vary?
Well, I think that like I said, I really loved those kinds of movies. And there was always something inside me that really did not like the battling, did not like the violence. Even though I liked kung fu movies, I like hero movies, all that kind of stuff. There was always a part of me that it bothered me that we had to fight anything. So when Dr. Bradley Nelson introduced the whole entity thing and he had, his healing modality had to do that, I kind of dove in and learned more and more. I realized that even though my second spiritual teacher that taught me more about entities said I was anointed to do the work and we are in a great spiritual battle here on earth, I evolved even past that point to see that it's actually not a battle. And every time I figured out a new entity, let's just say, um, um, interference, there were all different types. For example, I'm one of the few, if I think the only at the time, I don't know if there's anybody now except for my students, to notice that entities can stick to and attach to different parts of your electronics and mess with them. We used to have entities interfering with the MP3, MP4 that we would send out with the course, so much so that I would just do a manual, meaning like I'll just do it myself and clear their CD player. Remember the old days, CD player? I'd clear their CD player, right? And then it would work. right? And then I thought to myself, I got to get smarter here because this is like going to be a lot of work. So what I did was I programmed it so that the intention to play it was enough to clear the entities. And so with every little trick the entities would come up with, instead of me being mad and angry and why are you doing this, all this kind of stuff, I'd be like, that's a good one. Never thought of that. Wow, that's really smart. Okay, well, here's your chess move. Well, I'm going to invent this chess move.
Right.
Man, that's good. So I was like thanking them, like not because I want them to interfere with people, but I'm like, you're just making me smarter, guys. Like, and I think that's really ultimately in the big picture, that's their role, is to evolve us and, believe it or not, get us closer to divine love. So I no longer battle entities because, if you exorcise an entity from someone, it just goes to somebody else who has poor boundaries. Why not heal them to a higher vibrational level, if allowed, because sometimes we're not, so that they can go to the next stage of their spiritual journey. And some of them are like, this is my assignment for this fractal, of the universe. I'm supposed to bug you, like they're not aware of it at the time, but Neil Donald Walsh used to say in his books, I only send you angels. Now, not literal angels, but in this case, even the entities come from somewhere, and everything comes from the void, the source. So when people get really upset, especially the religious people get really upset when I say that, they're like, oh, well, there's good and then there's evil. And then, the curses don't come from source. I'm like, well, it's an invention. It's a thing. Everything comes from source, right? You can't say God is all powerful and, creator of all, and then go, yeah, but not this. God only wants love. God only wants you to be happy. I'm like, God is like not a guy, is not a person. So we've projected our human personality onto this God that seemingly has these opinions of what it wants and doesn't want. My current understanding of source, the creator of all that is like God wants to experience itself. So it broke itself up into billions and billions and billions and billions of fractals of so-called others, but we're really just one. But it's an illusion that we're in all these billions, and we get to interact with each other. And when we get to interact, then there's evolution, there's information. It's like, oh, this is such a cool experience. It's like you might as well get on the roller coaster rather than imagine a roller coaster, if you know what I mean. So that's what God's doing, having a roller coaster ride.
Oh, that is such a beautiful explanation. And thank you. I really love what you're saying. Can you give us like a little story, an experience of an entity attachment and that really surprised you? And can you also talk about the different kinds? Because sometimes people think it's just the demonic, I've come across so many varied ones and just, give us a couple stories and how people have really healed from the removals of these energies.
Well, I have probably way too many stories for the time that we have. However, I decided to start documenting. Well, I remember them all, but I started sharing these stories on 3-minute reels on Instagram. And within a week, my Instagram tripled. I was like, oh, is that what they want? They want stories? I got tons of stories. So I shall pick from a few of those. So I'll the one I just did earlier this past weekend is I call it the ghost dog story. So I have a little Jack Russell Terrier, probably a mutt, but he looks like a Jack Russell Terrier. We got him from the Humane Society. We are his third owners. And when we got him, I'm a first-time dog owner, so I don't know what I was doing. He was just really anxious, just really like, he'll when he gets excited for food, he'll do the same thing, but he just was shivering. And then all the time at night, we'd put him in his kennel and, we got the blankets and, everything. We kiss him goodnight, right? Oh my gosh, he would just whine all night. My husband's got the pillows over his ears. I got earplugs. just whine. And we go out and we're like, you're okay, buddy, you're okay, right? Oh my gosh, he'd whine. So I did some energy healing on him. I had my friends do it because it's my dog. So I'm like, maybe I'm not objective. So you guys do it. So I had a couple of energy healers help him, and he did improve. He was less stressed, less anxious during the day, but at night he would still whine. He would still whine. So finally, one early morning when my husband had just had it up to here, with the whining, he just, so he's like, tramping out from the bedroom, just about to say, will you be quiet, which would not have worked. But anyway, he was just about to tell him off to be quiet. And he sees this little black cloud leave his kennel. And then Apache was completely quiet. And my husband's like, runs back into the bedroom. I just saw this little black mist thing leave his kennel. I said, how big? And he goes, small. It was like, I'm like, dog size? He's like, yeah, kind of. I said, that's weird. I've checked him for entities. So but the thing is, I've always checked him for entities during the day when I was awake. So apparently this little black thing was a ghost. So one of the types of entities, negative entities, was a ghost. And I'm like, well, who's ghost? Right? Who's ghost? Well, it actually wasn't from anybody in this timeline. It was from a parallel reality where Apache, my dog, had been violently killed by his owner in that timeline and became a ghost dog. And I'm like, that happens? It's so funny because I posted this on Instagram and somebody said, that's my dog too, right? So yes, it can happen. And so he would visit himself in this timeline every night, and it whine. And as soon as I released that entity, because the entity would leave when we came out and when we were awake, it would only come at night through, I don't know what portal, but anyway, I think that the dog could just sense it. The dog's very sensitive. My husband's very sensitive and clairvoyant. I'm not as clairvoyant, like seeing stuff out here, but he's very clairvoyant. So once we released and healed the entity, he never whined again. Not at night. And so that's one healing. One that my friend, well, actually it's my husband's friend, her name's Heidi. She just posted on Facebook, this was a couple of years ago, and she posted on Facebook that she has not been able to sleep ever since her mother died. That was my husband's cue to ask me if I'd be willing to help her in case it was entity related. And I said, sure. And so he asked permission, says, hey, my mom, my wife can do some energy stuff. And I hear you're not sleeping. Would it be okay if she helped? And she said, oh, anything. I haven't slept, for so long. So I went ahead and checked, and sure enough, there was an entity, but not a full ghost. It was her mom who had died, but it was only a partial. It was a soul fragment of her mom. Like most of her mom had, quote unquote, crossed over. And I asked where, and it was in her bedroom, but I wanted to be more specific. Well, was it attached to her? No. The bed? Nope. The lampshade? Nope. Electronics? Nope. Nope. Finally, I figured it out. It was in the closet. Okay, so it's in the closet. What is in the closet that's attached to? Well, I get some sort of box. I get a yes for box, and I get a yes for it's made of wood, which is odd because you think cardboard box, right? But it's made of wood. And I thought, okay, well, she's probably gonna think I'm nuts, but oh well. So I told my husband, he told her, and he says, he asked, do you have a wooden box of some sort in the closet in your bedroom? And she at first said no, but then she looked at her closet and she realized that there was an heirloom Singer sewing machine, and it had a box that they no longer make any longer. It was a box that was made of pure wood. So she said, I do have a Singer like box to cover this heirloom sewing machine that was passed down to me when my mother died. And that's where mom, or part of mom, had attached. So I said, okay. So we healed that fragment, resolved it back to the whole of her mom, and she was immediately able to sleep that night and has slept ever since. Yeah.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I had a client recently who I had removed an attachment from, and she just started to feel so bad, like she had done something wrong.
Hmm.
And how do you counsel people? Is that what you encounter as well? That they feel, oh my gosh, did I do something wrong? Am I bad in some way? How do you counsel your clients, and what do you tell people about this?
So what was she feeling bad about, to be more specific?
She was like, what do I need to do? Is this going to happen to me again? Why did this have
Oh,
to, why did this happen to me?
oh, so she thought it
She
was her
was like,
fault that the entity had attached.
exactly. She
Okay,
freaked
okay.
out
Okay. Yeah, that's true. That
around
that does
this.
happen. Yes, that's a great question. So in my bigger course for entity healing and clearing called the Light Warrior Bootcamp 3.0, we talk about what we call the attractor factors. So that's one of the master classes in the course, and the attractor factors can range from a lot of different things. But one of the things I want to point out here is that a person can be a perfectly good person, have really good intentions, never have any evil intentions, and still have an entity. And there can be this guilt, but it's unnecessary. All it means is that your spiritual boundaries at that moment in time was less than 100%. And the entity, maybe you're in the wrong place at a wrong time attached, because it's like sometimes if it's a ghost, for example, sometimes, like I had this one kid who did not remember this, but mom told me later. I tested that at approximately age 2, that something happened, an injury of some sort, and a ghost of a little old lady who died, and he was a hypochondriac acting like a little old lady, thinking that everything was wrong with him, including cancer and a tumor and everything like that. Had all these medical tests he insisted on having. His parents, for years, he didn't smile. They were at their wits' end. They were like, I think he needs acupuncture, right? But the first thing I do is I do muscle testing on them, and he was not him. So he was this little old lady. And then once we released her, he got completely better. I asked his mom, or sorry, I asked him what happened at age 2. And he goes, nothing. Do you remember your mom talking about something? Did you have an accident? Nope. So I'm thinking he's never coming back because he's going to think I'm nuts. Right? So mom calls me later and says, oh my gosh, he doesn't remember. But I can't remember where he fell off of, but he hit his head. It was very serious. We had to rush him to the hospital. We thought he might have, he might die. Like it was that serious. So where's there a lot of entities? At the hospital. So this little old lady had not crossed over and probably went, oh, you poor thing, right? Let me help you attach. So sometimes it can come that innocently, and other times not so innocently. For example, a pastor or a priest who is secretly watching porn at night, has some sort of addiction in that way, or addiction to drugs, something like that. So it's not aligned with who he says he is. So that's where there's a chink in the armor, and that's where entities have the possibility of attaching. One of the biggest things for the average person, I'm not talking evil person, but the average person, is they don't love themselves fully. I know that's a tall order for many people, but your lack of self-worth and self-love gets you vulnerable to a number of things. It doesn't mean you're going to have an entity attachment, but if you want to 100% prevent an entity attachment, yeah, let's work on that. Let's work on you feeling really good about yourself, knowing you are a unique individual that's amazing and you deserve love. Even if you just sat there on the couch and did nothing, you deserve love. You are loved. You are loved, and you are worthy just by being you. If we really embodied that, there'd be no attachments. Does that
Well,
make
I'm glad
sense?
I asked you that question. Yeah, oh, absolutely. I'm so glad I asked you that because you got to talk about one of the beautiful courses that you offer, this Light Warrior Boot Camp. Can you tell us what are the courses that you offer, and how can people find out more about you?
Oh, well, thanks for asking that. Well, my website's karencan.com, and we also have a community that we invite people in. It's absolutely free to join. We do a monthly mini healing each month, and there's a different theme every month, and that's also free to experience the TOLPAKAN Healing Method. And in groups, it's really, really fun to do healing work together. And the Lightboard Bootcamp 3.0 is one of our flagship beginner courses. Because, it's a very interesting topic. People really like it. It's one of our oldest ones that has been improved. That's why it's 3.0, because it's the third iteration of that. As I learn and evolve, it also evolves as well. So we'll often, people often come in with one of these smaller self-healing programs. And we have in the community, we actually have a space for everyone that buys practically anything from us, that we will support them for a lifetime. So as long as they're not misbehaving, we'll support them for a lifetime. So they have a question about, I don't understand this. I don't understand this module. What does this mean? Can you give me some ideas? Like, what's a quality question to ask when I'm muzzle testing? We help you regardless. It doesn't matter if you bought the program last month or 5 years ago. So we continue to help and support there. So Lightboard Bootcamp is often where people get started. They're really interested in entity work. We have other courses that's on the website, karencan.com, where other people will get started in different things if they're not that interested in entity work. But pretty much everyone is interested in being empowered and figuring out what's causing this imbalance. Why am I not feeling good? Instead of going to the doctor right away, right? Perhaps we can back up and go, okay, if I can tune in, if I can align to source, ask the right question. Now in the TOLPAKAN Healing Level 1 course, we teach you that, and to activate healing frequencies directly addressing what you just tested that you need. So it's very, very fast, and it's very, very precise. And so that's kind of our major flagship product, our number one product, but it is a bigger course. There's a lot of live stuff there, support mentoring, demoing, that kind of thing. Of course, we also have that ongoing support online as well. People ask questions all the time, and they say, my sister has this, or I have this, or, whoever it is, we help them. And then for those that feel aligned and they really wish to become masterful at this and also do it as a business, doing one-on-one sessions with business, because I'm only one of me. I only take like 5 new people a year. So, we need some practitioners, then they can apply to be a certified TOLPAKAN healing practitioner. And so that's our up level of kind of the course map of how people often come in.
How wonderful. And thank you so much, Dr. Karen, for agreeing to be a part of this podcast. You're just an inspiration, and I hope, what a beautiful thing to bring to the world in a time where we all need so much healing, in so many different ways. Thank you so, so, so very much for being on the podcast. And everybody, thank you for being here and staying till the end. As you know, my name is Anne Marie Morales. You can find my offerings at ammhypnotherapy.com. Thanks again, Dr. Karen, for being here. Much love to everybody. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much again for the invite. And I know we didn't get to name all the different kinds of entities. That's actually part in the course where we go into detail of that, but people can certainly come into the community, and if they're interested in that, we can help them out. So thank you again, and thanks to your beautiful audience.
Thank you. Yep, take her course. I highly recommend.